Today, I'm sitting down with executive producer Amir Kovacs to talk all things Book of Joshua, Walls of Jericho, the faith, the filmmaking, and the moments that give us chills. You don't want to miss this one. Let's dive in because Kingdom Builder starts right now.
Hi, my name is Lachlan.
Hi, my name's Brooklyn. I'm We're from Southland.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is John Wesley.
Hey, Josh Bissell here.
Hey, this is Jamie McDonald.
What's up? I'm Laverdier.
Hey, it's Leah.
And Brandon with Presence Music Band.
What's up, y'all? This is Seth Schleter.
This is Anya Lee.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Bodie, and you're tuned in to Kingdom Builder.
Hey friends, I'm Mike Laxton with Kingdom Builder, and I'm excited today to sit down with a creative visionary behind a powerful new on-demand film, Book of Joshua, Walls of Jericho. We're honored to talk with the executive producer himself, Amir Kovacs. Amir, welcome to Kingdom Builder. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Hopefully I said your name right. I'm hoping I got the pronunciation correct. Yes, we're good?
Yes, you got it right. It's the last name is Kovacs, but since
Kovacs,
I came,
okay.
well, it's spelled Kovacs. So people started saying Kovacs, and I'm like, you know what? I'll go with that.
Hey, that works. I will go with that. So I had a chance to watch the film. I thought it was really cool. I'm glad to really have you on the show today. But just to kind of, get our audience to help them a little bit know about what this movie is about. I mean, it kind of says it in the title, Book of Joshua, Walls of Jericho. But in your own words, what kind of inspired you and the team to take on this specific story from Scripture?
It's a great question. I was born and raised in Israel. I've basically studied the Old Testament. I've read the New Testament, but mainly focused in the Old Testament. And the Book of Joshua, the Israelites, the warrior part of it was just always something that I was attracted to. Mm-hmm. Later on, as I served in the military, my captain one time said, he goes, you're the new Israelites. So everything kind of made sense. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of biblical stories. I think that they have everything we can ask for, from a romantic comedy to horror to drama, and obviously to adventure. And being a big fan of epic films and biblical stories, it would only make sense for an Israeli to write that story.
No, absolutely, and that you definitely have a lot of you'll have a lot of background there that'll make it really a good perspective to put behind the story for sure. So I think that's great, and I know that's going to be coming out on June 3rd, which is going to be here very soon. So for those who might be watching this after it's come out yet, what can viewers expect from both the storytelling and production perspective of the film?
Viewers can expect that we stayed very loyal to the actual story. We had to add some form of fiction because we don't really know the exact dialogue that happened. We assumed the dialogue based on the action of the Book of Joshua. So we assumed that Rahab would say this and Joshua would say that, just to drive to the next scene, to the next action. We stayed very loyal to that. We wanted to depict the characters exactly the way they were depicted in the Book of Joshua. Mm-hmm. As far as the animation style, we wanted to do something more anime style, old school, vintage, to your point, this Saturday morning cartoon that kids, young adults, and even our older generation can see the story that they've learned and studied all their lives come to life in a way that is not too computerized, if you will, something that kind of adds a human factor, that you see some form of imperfection, some form of errors that is still very interesting, which took me a while to get used to, by the way. But that's what happens when you do a 2D 12 frames per second film. You look at it and you say, why can't it be a little bit more flowing like this? But I kind of like the vintage type style.
And I'll admit, that's like first look is like, well, this is definitely interesting. And you mentioned the anime, so now I didn't want to say that initially before we had the conversation, but my son's a big anime fan. I've watched a little bit, so I get that now. I can really relate to that. And as I mentioned off top camera earlier, that there's a Saturday morning cartoon feel definitely gives me that feeling like I'm just turning on to that cartoon style, which I think is good because of course the format. It's going to be on demand. You're going to be able to see it here on the 3rd. But your role as executive producer, also as a writer, for those who are unfamiliar with that role, and especially in an animated project, can you kind of unpack what your responsibility was in those roles as far as pre-production and up to the final release?
Yeah, so I was the writer of the screenplay, and later on, I brought on my director, Tony Gauze, very talented director with great vision, and he put his 2 cents into the script, so he became my co-writer, and I produced the film. So I'm the producer of the film, and because the film needs the money, I'm also the executive producer of the film. The job of the writer is to envision and put the words on paper with the action, with the verbiage, the dialogue, and to create a story. And that's when we bring in the director, and he takes that story and talks to me as the producer. And we kind of have a vision. How do we want to do this? What kind of angles? The job of the producer is to make sure that all the schedules are in line, to get the animation studio, to make sure the actors are being casted. Basically, you supervise the entire production. And having the role of the executive producer, my role is also to bring money into the movie, whether it's my money or somebody else's money, to take care of investors, as well as take care of all the contracts, all the admin behind any type of a product that you're about to launch. That's the job of the producer / executive producer.
Now, the story itself, again, it tells one of the most iconic stories in the Old Testament and Scripture with Joshua and the walls of Jericho. Is there maybe a deeper message or spiritual takeaway that your team wanted to emphasize through this version of the story?
My message, I'm being asked this question over and over again, and I'm going to have to go back to my favorite scene, which is the fall of the godly walls of Jericho. And before I started the production, I told my director, I don't care what you do in the entire movie, but when it comes to these walls, this needs to be magnificent. It needs to take time. And the reason I focused on the walls is because, number one, it's a very epic scene in the book of Joshua. Number two is because of the message that I want to deliver. And the message is that I've been told by my grandfather, by my father, by my own military captain, there is not a single wall you cannot overcome in life as long as you believe. And that was my angle with that specific scene as well. It wasn't the sword that took the walls down. It wasn't anything else except the faith. And faith took it down. As long as they believed, it took it down. So people ask me, so how come they walked around the wall so many times? Because they were not in full faith.
Right.
They needed to walk as long as it takes until they believe. And I can relate to so many stories that happened to me in my life that until I actually believed, things actually started happening. So that was that one message I wanted to deliver through this film.
And I think, it's that specific message is even mentioned in the film too, that it wasn't the sword that brought the walls down. It's the faith. And just that lead up to that scene, I'm thinking about just, the time you took to present it, and just the actions. And I won't give it too much away, but just the build up to the point where the walls, come tumbling down. It's like, this is a really, that was, again, your favorite part. That was definitely my favorite part of the movie. Finally seeing that happen, and it's definitely towards the end, which concludes the story. But I thought it was well done, and I think it really just shows the power and strength that God has as well to be able to do that when the Israelis were able to have the faith and be able to go ahead and believe that, hey, he's going to do this for them. They just need to trust in him to do that. So, of course, with a lot of biblical based movies out there, there's always that fine balance between getting the message right and the entertainment value. And I know you've mentioned that you've kind of added a little bit, of course, that was assumed based off of just moving the story along. How did you kind of approach that challenge without sacrificing either the entertainment or the biblical side of things?
I stuck to the story. When you as a writer, now I'll speak to you as I'm the writer. When you think about characters, it takes a very long time to develop a character. And then you let the character tell you what he or she would do. So when it came to Rahab, I had an idea of who this person was. But then I kind of looked at her actions and I said, she's a lot more than the way she's being depicted in the Bible. She has to be smart. She has to be sophisticated to be able to survive such era. in that time. Same thing with when it comes to Joshua. Joshua just received a responsibility, and a very big responsibility. If I'm Joshua, how would I take that?
Mm-hmm.
You have to second guess yourself. Am I worthy? Am I the right one? And if I am worthy or not worthy, what would I think? What would I say?
Mm-hmm.
I'm the Israelites, and all of a sudden I trust a guy named Moses, but then he passes the baton to Joshua. Do I just go and believe and follow Joshua because I know that I'm going to battle? How would I react to that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of getting in the minds and the heads of all those characters to be able to kind of, in many ways, assume what type of dialogue they had to be able to achieve the end result.
Mm-hmm.
So as I mentioned before, I would take the action of the actual story in the Bible, and based on that, I would assume the action of the characters and what type of dialogue. So I tried to stay away from politics, to stay away from anything to deliver that kind of point. My whole point is, this is the book of Joshua. I'm going to bring that to life in the most sophisticated way without veering off to something that is not really based on anything.
Now, you've been around the entertainment industry for a little while, so of course you're pulling in influences from different areas. As far as this particular visual and tone, is there any biblical films that served as a visual or emotional blueprint, or even maybe non-biblical? What was kind of the basis behind that?
From a visualization standpoint, I love The Prince of Egypt. It's one of my favorite animation. It is quasi sophisticated, but I thought it was done very, very well, and I was a big fan of that style. I like the Ten Commandments, the old Ten Commandments. I thought that was a classic. That was a great one. I think there were a lot of faith-based films that I was not a big fan of because they became a little bit too fictionalized. There was too much influence from the director or some type of perspective, whereas I tried to stay very, very objective to the story without adding my own opinion. And that was probably one of the biggest challenges because the story is written right there in the scriptures. All you have to do is take it out, add a little bit of what you think happened, but stay loyal to that. But I was focusing on the style of animation, as well as some examples of what I've seen before, what to do, what not to do, to create something that I think is going to be received very well.
Now, another part of the movie that I particularly liked is that when it comes to movies, I'm always listening to the music, and I think you did such a great job of getting a composer who would put such emphasis in the right spots at the right times and really just making that story come to life. And so I just wanted to say that, kind of randomly say that, just because that was a big part of that. So for those who are really into the music side, I think you did a really good job of that as well. So of course, just wanted to say that. Now, with again, with having been around the film and media world for some time, was there how was your, besides you mentioned the Israeli, you were in the military and things like that, was there any other maybe personal faith yourself that shaped the involvement of the project, or how does this differ from other projects you've worked on?
It's a great question. Let me touch for a second on the music part that you mentioned. Our composer, Daniela Kaur, who's an extremely talented young woman, did such a great job. And there is a role as a producer. I'm the manager of the film. I dictate what to do and how to do, except of one thing. You never do the job of the composer. You never do the job of the director. You never do the job of the actors. Everybody has a job. But I went to Daniela, and she took the Hans Zimmer class. And we all know Hans Zimmer, Academy Award-winning Hans Zimmer. And I said, Daniela, I'm not going to tell you how to do this because I don't know how to do it myself. All I'm going to tell you is this: biblical, godly, epic, desert, battle. You take those words, you put them together. I need something incredible. And she sent me a first example, and I was floored. I'm listening to it in my car. I called my director and I said, we found a composer. So I'm glad you mentioned it because she was a massive, massive contributor to this film.
I think that was a huge part of it. And as far as kind of essentially going back to my question before leading up to that, how does this movie differ from others that you've worked on in the past?
So this is my first animated film. All my other films that I've worked on, that I was part of, were all live action films. None of them were faith-based. A lot of them were either true stories. I was more being attached to these films in some kind of fashion, maybe an associate producer, executive producer, actor, co-writer. None of them were my films. They were all films that I liked. One of them was Santa Claus Boot Camp, for example. That was not really my film, but I was happy to be part of. This film is definitely my first animation, and my vision, my screenplay, my production. The other films, besides being live action, I was more attached to them, and I contributed whatever I could to make the film happen. But I was a guest star in those.
Yeah. No, of course. Now, there's another particular scene. I'm not going to say what it was specifically, and I swear, I swear, I feel like you pulled from Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark scene. I think you know exactly what scene I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
So I saw that. I'm like, I love that because I don't remember that being in the actual biblical account, but it's like
Right.
just. Am I right? Did you kind of get that influence from that movie for that particular scene? I don't know.
I would love to say yes to that, but I'm going to blame my director for that one. Because he's the one that was so adamant about this scene. And I said, Tony, why? And he goes, I got to have that scene. And I'm like, that's fine. Because in many ways, this scene is a perfect scene to depict what would happen if you did this and that.
Yes. No, I agree. And I think that's going to make people wondering, hey, what are we talking about? Well, if you watch the movie and you've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly right.
But one of the themes that, of course, also noticed in that, and we was that courage under pressure. Joshua facing, again, as you mentioned, something massive and unknown. He's just stepping into this role. This is like the first big decision and role he has to play. How do you personally relate to that theme as a producer as well as a leader in the faith-based industry?
Well, I mean, courage under pressure. I mean, I can relate to that from again, military days, playing soccer, playing tennis. All that is related in the film industry, specific in the faith-based world. I think instead of categorizing specifically, even though it is a category, the faith-based category, I think it's still a form of art. And as a form of art, some people will respond to it tremendously in a very great way, and others will say, oh, it's the Bible, we don't really care about that, which to each its own. To me, it's another form of art that is much needed and very necessary. So I do think that I may have some challenges, but I'm hoping and praying that I don't, mainly because to me, it's very much a no-brainer. It's kind of going back to that faith-based that again, of course, I'm a faith-based person. So
Absolutely. And so speaking to those after they watched the film, I definitely, saw it, of course, as the piece of art it is, as well as, me also being faith-based, see that part of it as well. And again, as I mentioned, off record, I was at this, I've not seen this story depicted in a long time. At least I can't think of the Walls of Jericho story being depicted in any form of media, whether it's animated or even live action. So I think it's definitely a great time to be out there and have it. But after watching the film, what's the one thing you hope viewers would take away after watching it?
I will say that when I did the first screening, when 180 people showed up, and that's friends and family from all faiths, may it be Muslims or Jews or Christians or Hindus, everybody showed up. And the common denominator that I got, besides all the accolades of what a great film, great animation, and good job, the one thing that I took out of this is that every single person who's not too familiar with the story said, you just taught me the book of Joshua. And every single one of them went to read the book of Joshua. And then I get those phone calls back to say, you actually brought the story to life. And that gave me that reassurance that I think I did a good job in being very loyal to the actual book of Joshua. So that's the one thing I would love young adults and everybody for that matter to take out of this. that if you don't have the time to sit down and read, maybe this will inspire you to do that. Because your imagination, when you read the Bible and you listen to your pastor or you listen to your rabbi, that will be the best thing you've ever done.
No, and I would say I would agree. It definitely it educates you, and again you fill in the gaps a little bit of like, well, what could be said, and what you've said is very, it makes sense. It's not, there was not a whole lot of, I don't see that anything exorbitantly done that would be completely out of place for that story. So, with this particular story, is this going to be part of a series of a future slate of biblical stories that you have under your banner, or what can we expect in the future?
Yes, actually, you can expect this specific series is a trilogy, and we're already in pre-production for the second and the third, and until the completion of the conquest, the book of Joshua. And yes, we're playing with the idea of doing a little bit more because the experience was so good for me mentally, and the feedback that I've gotten was so great that I really enjoy this. So you expect the second and the third to come out, hopefully in the next couple of years, and then we'll see. We have a lot of great stories in the Bible.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing that. And I do have a couple more quick questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So, of course, with this film coming out, besides just watching, how can those watching and listening to this podcast support you, whether by word of mouth, prayer, and just engaging with your team? What would you recommend?
Prayer is always my first answer. Without prayer, who are we? Of course, it will be released June 3rd on Fandango and Apple TV, and I'm sure other more venues, social platforms. That'll be great. And I hope they like it enough to spread the good word. And let's try to get as many people to the seats so they can watch a wonderful film and learn more about it and see a perspective that, again, it's my perspective, but it's definitely loyal to the actual book of Joshua.
Absolutely. And we, of course, we here at Kingdom Builder and Today's Christian Entertainment, we want to do our part to help spread that. And we do plan to do that as well. And Dan, thank you so much for your time. And one last quick question. If you could say one thing to a young creative who wants to start making meaningful media, but doesn't know where to start, what would you tell them?
Number one, there is audience for everything. For everything. Everything you create is meaningful because it's meaningful to you. And if it's meaningful to you, it'll be meaningful to somebody else as well. And it boils down to having the urge to do that, having the faith to do it, and absolutely doing it. Don't wait, don't postpone, do it. There's audience for everything. It's not about what you create, it's about creating and continue to create. If you believe in yourself, they will believe in you as well.
Absolutely. And if you don't start, you can't get better. And if you don't start, you can't get anywhere at all. So I think that's a great words of advice there, Amir. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your transparency, and letting us know more about the heart behind Book of Joshua, Walls of Jericho. Again, for our viewers out there and listeners, June 3rd, it's out, Fandango, Apple TV, and hopefully other platforms as well. Definitely give it a watch. It's not only a visually powerful representation of that story of Walls of Jericho with the Book of Joshua, but also spiritually compelling. And again, Amir, thank you so much for joining us on Kingdom Builder. We really do appreciate your time.
Thank you. And if they want, they can get on the Instagram, Book of Joshua, Walls of Jericho. They can see some of the images from the movie. I think they're going to like it. And thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we put those links in the description as well.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to like, comment, and share this with a friend, and we'll make sure we link everything you need to know in the description below. And until next time, I'm Mike Laxton, reminding you to keep Christ first in your lives, and everything else will fall into place.